Hi. While Emily's typing, I will say hi, even though
No,
they're supposed to start off.
I was not paying attention. Sorry. I thought we were still. Hi. Hey, folks. Hi, greetings. You are watching and or listening to Horror Nerds at Church, a ridiculously queer podcast where we take a deep dive into a horror film and talk about how it connects to queerness, religion, and theology. I'm Pastor Emily, and I am herding Tuca cats.
I love it. I love it. And I am Pace, and I am um just sad to be leaving behind my Star Wars season after so long. I love my Star Wars. So, but also I'm kind of happy for it because it's been a long season
What? No way. It's only been over a
since
year now.
August.
Well,
Yeah, since
technically
May 4th when we
May the
announced
4th
it.
last year. Yeah. Yeah. And,
And
sorry.
we're joined by
Hi, I'm Suzannah. I'm your techie person, and I am back with Leia's Blue Buttons.
I love it.
Fabulous.
Thank you for joining us, Susanna, and for helping make this video possible. This video, like the last three live videos we're doing, are only possible because of the amazing super techie, no, super slicer genius that Susanna Porter is in making all this possible. So we're so grateful for her. And I was going to say this to announcements, but I'll say it now because I'm already singing your praises. Uh, Susanna is like officially now the newest member of the HNAC team and will be joining us for a lot of our episodes next season and helping with the tech and all that cool stuff. So, so
Hmm.
happy.
I'm so excited. It'll be a whole new way of podcasting altogether now. Looking
Woo! And she will be joining us as a guest for at least one of our boot tubes next season. So stay tuned to the very end of the episode for that. But for all of you listening, I would love to invite you to follow us on patreon.com by going to patreon.com/horror nerds at church. It's really fun. And since we're moving to a video format, we'll probably start with next season putting the names of everybody who's a Patreon supporter in part of our closing thank yous or something on
forward.
video and stuff.
That's
Because
brilliant.
you all are awesome. And so now's your chance to sign up in preparation for our seventh season. I can't believe it's 7 seasons already. But between now and season 7, I will commit to that. I won't commit to them all coming up by the end of the month. But between now and season 7, you will get on Patreon a movie commentary on Spaceballs, the infamous or famous parody, Star Wars parody. You will get a boot tube on the amazing TV show Andor, which Emily and I need to watch still in preparation for the episode rewatch. We've seen it before, but years ago.
Yeah.
So need to watch it again. So that's why I'm committing for the episode to come out by season 7. It might not come out this month though, because Emily, I need to watch a whole season. Um, and then also, and that's for our $5 level, and so you can get that for just $5 a month. Super cheap, much cheaper than the streaming service subscriptions you need to keep up with Star Wars. Um,
For real.
and then for our horror buff tier, our $10 tier, what you'll be getting this uh sometime this summer is a special episode with Kay Roloff and Rory Roloff, who are going to
Mhm.
be talking with Emily and I about Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And Kay is planning to make her case that it is a horror movie, and she doesn't even make that case to me because I agree with her 100%. But we'll talk about that movie sometime this or next month as well.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, and also, if you're listening at home, we can't do this live, obviously, because we don't know what we're going to talk about. But if you're listening to this when it drops on our podcast feed, You can check out our show notes for any content warnings or notifications for this episode.
Hmm. And we are, as ever, an after hours podcast. So please note that there may be adult language and adult themes. Although, if you want to just listen to the part with where we talk about the kids' books, we will do our best not to have adult language or themes when we talk about kids' books.
Ooh, good call. Good call. Glad you
Yeah.
said that because otherwise I would not have. Pace likes to swear. What can I say? Um, so checking in. How have you been, Emily and Suzannah?
Yeah. We have puppies. I have a puppy in the room with me right now. She is passed out on the floor because she's had a couple walks today.
Aw, yeah.
It's very exciting.
I'm okay. I have Wavelength from Elgato, and so I'm practicing new stuff with the podcast, and having like new inputs, and I'm super excited about it, and I hope that it's working out okay. So like, I'll be able to like open up an email without like a sound happening on my desktop, and it also going out to the live stream. And like, I'm hoping that like maybe someday we could put a soundboard in there and we can have a button for R2D2 sounds and a button for other sounds, and I can just comment silently but with sound effects, or so, like stuff like that. So I mean, like, I'm gonna mess up today because I'm using this new I'm using Wavelength and I haven't before, but I'm excited about the possibilities.
Yes, this is a
I
foretaste
love
of
that.
the feast to come, as they say
Right?
in the church and
Season,
kinky places.
yeah, season 7 is gonna be lit, y'all.
Mhm.
Speaking of lit, look at that transition. Today is our Star Wars lit retrospective, or as
Oh
I
my gosh,
jokingly called it, Star Wars is lit retrospective.
that is
Um,
so good. Well done, Cindy. Well done.
Woo, right? I can make a transition every now and again. Not
I'm so
too
impressed.
NV to transition, just pretty NV to NV to transition. Um,
It's true.
buy that shirt in our merch store, by the way.
It's true. Or by the
Pride Month is
UNB not to transition shirt
right.
as well.
Pride Month, Queer Pride Month may be over. We're recording this in Disability Pride Month right now, but that does not mean it is too late to get all of our queer merch shirts and stuff,
Our pride
and
merch
stickers,
is
bags.
always in the shop.
Yes, 100%.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so Star Wars literature retrospective. This
Yeah.
is uh kind of we did one literature retrospective before for our vampire season. We had special guest Paige Stauffer on for that, and that was super fun because vampires are a very literary genre. But Star Wars is also very literary.
Yeah, I had
There are
no
novel,
idea until we started
yeah,
getting so deeply into Star Wars in general.
yeah.
I was like, oh, nice.
There
Nice.
are literally hundreds, if not thousands, but I can safely
Literally.
say hundreds. Yes, literally. The puns will just keep coming. But literally hundreds of Star Wars books in canon and also not in canon. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm gonna begin this episode with a little bit of where to start if you want to get into Star Wars literature, but you're overwhelmed by all the choices because, as I said, there are hundreds of books out there. So you might be like, I want to dip my toes into it, but I'm very overwhelmed. That's how I was for many, many years. And so I have some tips on how to get into it if you want to get into it. And
And
then
so far,
Emily's
those
going to talk.
tips are working well for me, at least.
Awesome. Awesome. And then Emily's going to talk about some of the Star Wars kids, junior and middle grade literature. Uh, and then I've keep referencing the High Republic all season long. I've been talking about the High Republic. So I'm going to
I'm sure
devote
you
a little
really
bit of
have.
this episode to talking about what the High Republic is, in case you haven't had a chance to read the books or all the multimedia. It's a multimedia project. But just kind of a brief overview of some of the themes and kind of the big plot thing without the big overarching plot without revealing spoilers for what happens, but just kind of what it's about
I
in general.
appreciate that.
And then after that, Emily's going to recommend some non-Star Wars books that you may be interested in reading. That are kind of related in theme or style or setting or genre to Star Wars. And then I will close us out with my top 10 Star Wars books of all time. And then after that, we will finally announce, we already announced what our which season picks were for season 7. But we are also going to announce what we're going to be airing on Patreon for season 7. So again, only $5 to sign up. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff this coming season for Patreon, exclusive to Patreon folks.
Hmm. I'm so excited. I think it's gonna be super fun.
Yeah, it's going to be spooky. It's going to be witchy. It's going to be
It's gonna be
all sorts of things.
bewitching.
There we go. I was hoping you could come up with a better pun than I could.
I got you. It's what I'm here for. It's really why I'm on this podcast, to come up with puns. Mostly to make really
Um,
weird faces when they happen.
I love it. All here for that.
Mhm.
Um, so we always kind of start off with the question of just how what you've been reading and what you've been watching. We have been reading a lot of Star Wars in preparation for that, but in the world beyond Star Wars, what have you been reading and watching lately?
The Lunar Chronicles, which is also going to come up later. I have been mostly reading the Lunar Chronicles books and watching Doctor Who. Um, yeah, also for Nerds at Church, if I can find it. Yes. For Nerds at Church, I am reading Call to Allyship, Preparing Your Congregation for Leaders of Color, which is edited by Reverend Angela T. Kabeb. And Pastor Angela and Pastor Jenny Sung are going to be guests on Nerds at Church. So I am reading this book in anticipation of the conversation that we're going to have about Call to Allyship for Nerds at Church. I have
I
something,
love
but
it.
it's not the same thing I've been saying for the last months.
Which book are you up to in the Lunar Chronicles?
I'm on Cress, which is the third one. It's slow
Okay.
because I like fall asleep and I have a dog now.
Yeah, yeah.
And the like job to finish putting together this giant mural, so a little busy.
How many are in that series again? 5?
The Lunar
4?
Chronicles have there's a bunch of like kind of spin-offs of the books. Um, so there's Cinder, Scarlet Cress, Winter, Fairest,
Nice.
Stars Above. And Stars Above, I think, is like a couple. Yeah, there are a couple like they're different short stories. Then there's a graphic novel spinoff of Wires and Nerve, which I really love. Um, and apparently there's a coloring book and a choose your own adventure to get Cinder to the wedding. Yeah, so there's a bunch, and she has other books that she's written since then and stuff too. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, what about you? What are you reading and watching?
Um, I'm still working through Doctor Who, as we know. I'm in the middle of the 4th Doctor. He was there for 7 seasons, has the longest tenure of any of the Doctors, so he takes a little bit to get through. and I am about two-thirds of the way through the 12th Doctor Peter Capaldi's first season. And beyond that, I watched Godzilla versus no, let me get the title right because now they're starting to make like algebraic titles and I'm so confused. Godzilla X Kong New Empire, not Godzilla versus Kong. Um, so we have to solve for X, I guess. Maybe
That
X
is
is Mothra.
almost as bad as Aliens, the 2, 3, 10 Predators, the.
Yeah, right. So I freaking love Godzilla. Godzilla is probably one of my favorite horror icons, maybe tied with Freddy Krueger. You heard me go on
Wow.
about Freddy Krueger in season 4. So I feel like I for a
That's
long time wanted to
really
do a
impressive.
Godzilla season. Emily has kind of agreed to it, so I'm wondering if that might be season 8, or maybe season 8 might be The Conjuring. We have some time before we get there. We have a whole season between now and then. But suffice it to say, Godzilla is going to be a season in the not too distant future,
I was
whether it's
gonna
eight
say,
or nine, somewhere in there.
I feel like every time we do a like check-in on what we're reading and watching, whatever you are reading and watching that is not directly related to the season is a foreshadowing that sometime soon this will be the new one.
Right? What can I say? I'm a horror nerd. It comes up a lot.
That's true.
It's almost like I have a podcast about it or something, and just I'm always thinking about what I could do for this podcast.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but anyway, so Godzilla has had many iterations, but right now, Legendary Studios, which is an American company, has licensed the character from Toho Studios, which is the owner of Godzilla and creator of all the Japanese Godzilla films. And so, if you don't know anything about this, just a brief summary is that Legendary is creating what they're calling a monsterverse of shared universe films. And so King Kong is part of this universe, plus some original characters, plus Godzilla, plus some of Godzilla's expanded lore characters like Mothra and King Ghidorah and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, so this new one is the newest one in Legendary's shared Monsterverse films, of which are like 5 or 6 films now and 2 TV shows. And it was fine. It was definitely
Wow, what an
campy.
endorsement. It
It
was.
was definitely campy. It was definitely like action heavy and CGI spectacle, kind of leaning into that, kind of
Hmm.
put together with a very, very shoestring plot that doesn't really make much sense. And that much said, like in many ways, that's what Godzilla became in the 1960s and 1970s when in Japan is this really campy character of let's have him beat up the latest bad guy and have it be super actiony and stuff and kind of try to come up with a plot to a very loose plot to kind of like we talked about this with Freddy versus Jason too and the Alien
Mhm.
versus Predators
Yeah.
in this season. It's like you get to a point where you're not there for the plot, you're just there to see two giant monsters beat each other up. And so, in that sense, it was very good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of giant monsters beating each other up. So,
I think in the fan fiction world it's plot what plot, but usually it doesn't involve beating people up.
yeah.
Involves
So,
some other choice.
some romance scene there.
Yeah.
There-
Yeah.
There's a little bit of one can easily ship King Kong and Godzilla in this because they like to team up a lot now. But they still also wrestle for dominance, as I put in air
Hmm.
quotes. So it's like, what could that be a
Yeah, I
metaphor
wonder what
for?
we're
Who's
trying
the
to
top and bottom in that relationship? We all know Godzilla is the top for Kong.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, pretty much.
Kong Kong is verse. I'll be fair. Kong is verse, and Kong is the top in many relationships. But when it comes to his relationship with Godzilla, Kong is the bottom. Godzilla's the top.
Hmm.
Um,
I'll buy it.
so yeah, that's what I've been watching. All that to say. Um, and if we do a Godzilla season, fans who like Godzilla, I am really curious if you would want us to follow the legendary verse of films. I think that's probably the most manageable because, like I said, there's only like five of them. Because if we try to do the original canon of Japanese films, there's like 30. If we try to do the 1980s through 90s canon, there's like 10. If you try to do the 2000s and beyond canon, there's like a lot.
1 million.
So we're not going to try to fit every single Godzilla film into one season because if we did, that season would last like 2 years. So
Even
let us
longer than
know what
Star
you would,
Wars Alien.
right? So let us know what kind of Godzilla you'd love to see from us.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking the legendary films interspersed with a few selections from older Godzilla to provide context. But the legendary films being the franchise we follow. So
Mm.
just to keep it manageable.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Can I tell you
Yeah.
what I'm
But then
watching?
oh,
Sorry, go
were
ahead.
you
I thought
saying
you were
something,
done.
Susanna?
I was just gonna
Oh,
say, can I
okay.
tell you what I'm watching?
You are muted for me though. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can I tell you what I'm watching?
Yes.
Yes,
I thought
please.
you were done. I am
I
really
am.
obsessed, and I
Please.
feel like everybody needs to watch AMC's Interview with a Vampire. It is just
Mm.
so good. It is so good, and
I
they
thought we were
changed.
watching that together for a while.
And I might have. It was an accident. It was the middle of the night, and the dog wouldn't go to sleep. And then I saw that the season two had been on, and they gave it to you for free. And I haven't done the whole like pay for AMC Plus yet, but I'm gonna because just like spoiler alert that everybody needs to know is that they took Interview with a Vampire and they made Louis and they made Claudia black, and it changed everything. Everything made sense. Everything was so much
Yeah.
better.
Mm.
The issues of power dynamics and the emotional manipulation and emotional trauma of power dynamics made more sense. Like it just made so much more sense, and they moved the time up. So instead of it being like
Yeah.
super like 1700s 1800s, they moved it up so that in the beginning it's early 1900s when like a lot of like black folks in Tulsa had created these small communities where they were thriving, but the overall larger communities with white power was pressing upon them. And then now the second season is going to be during World War II. So I'm like super fat. I've only watched one episode of the second season, but it is just so good. And I'm sorry if I
It
interrupted
really
you. I
is.
thought you were done. I
No,
apologize.
you didn't. An apology
Apology
rejected. I
rejected.
asked you because I wanted to know. So I'm glad you answered. I will just say that we have covered the movie Interview with the
Yes.
Vampire with
With Alex
Alex
Street.
Raby. Um, in season three, part of our Twilight season, we are covering
Mm.
vampires. And also, I want to say that we talked about the problematic elements of both the book and the film, the book and the vampire lit retrospective and the film in the episode, because in that Louis was a slave owner and stuff like that. And there are all sorts of problematic stuff. And Rice, who is now passed away, the author of the book has is like a white woman it, but you're just like you love the movies, you want to delve deeper into the Star Wars universe, but you're just intimidated by the sheer amount of literature out there.
Hmm.
Let me just do a quick Google search. I want to see how many Star Wars books there are and see if Google can answer that for me.
While
There
you do
are,
that, while you do that though,
oh,
this is
yes,
Bailey. Bailey, sit. Good girl, sit. This is Bailey, our big girl. She was whining and wanted some attention, so I thought I'd give her lots of attention. And now back to Rebel Command.
I love it. I love it. Hi, Bailey. Such a sweetheart. I see you. Aw. So there are 381 canon books, it looks like. And there are about 200 plus non-canon Star Wars books. So there are in the realm of 500 Star Wars books out there, not counting comics, stuff
That
like that.
is
So it's just a
so
lot.
many.
Yes. And there are people who have legit read all of them, and that is impressive. I have not. I've read probably about 100 Star Wars books. Um, Although this reading hyperfixation is starting to wane a little bit, so I might take a break for Star Wars for a little bit and come back to it. I took a little bit of a break last year and it worked great. Because then you can come back and you're refreshed and you want to read more. So, but if you just want to want to know where to start, my first and biggest recommendation is if you have a favorite Star Wars character, start
Mhm.
there. Read
Yeah.
like if Princess Leia is your Star Wars character, there are quite a bit. A lot of books.
I guess I think of middle grade as like middle school, but you're saying middle grade as like elementary school?
Yeah, middle grade or even I would say young reader chapter books somewhere in there.
Yeah. I was gonna say they feel like young reader chapter book style to me.
Yeah, and they're really well done, and they have they also have animations on Disney Plus of a few of the books, so you can see the animation. They're like short animated shorts that came out in like 2015. So a few of them are animated. So that's another great place to start, especially if you're like have a kid who's really into Star Wars, and it focuses on women who are Star Wars characters. And as Emily said, sadly, aside from the sequel trilogy, the first six films have women characters, but it focuses on a white boy Luke or Anakin Skywalker, and it's like we've had
Yep.
enough of him, of
Yep.
both of them.
It's true. It's true.
But yeah, also don't feel any shame or stigma about reading middle grade or early reader or young adult books. Like all of that is valid. Reading is reading. You don't have to be a kid to read it. I
Hmm.
read these and it always frustrates me. Like I love the website Utini and I'll be referencing it quite a bit here because they are like devoted to Star Wars literature. It's a fan website, but like they usually don't list the early reader or middle grade books in their lists of Star Wars books. So then it's like you have to do extra research to find it. And I was like, you should list them because they count and they bring just as much canon and story to the an expansion to the Star Wars universe as the young adult and adult novels. Um, and then the last thing I'll kind of recommend before I just go through a few books explicitly that are good places to start. But follow the type of media you like. So if you're really into comics or graphic novels, there are a million of those out there. Um, like the Leia Princess of Alderaan book that Emily was talking about, part of the Leia trilogy. If you prefer graphic novel style, there is a graphic novel adaptation of that book that you can read, and it's really good. But then there are also graphic novels and comics are not adaptations, but just like more expanded stuff. There's also audio dramas. So like starting with the Star Wars audio drama of the 1981 or 1982 that was on National Public Radio. Like there's audio adaptations that expand the story, really good. And then they're still producing new ones, some that are not adaptations, but like original stories. Like the High Republic has a few audio dramas that are really cool.
Mm.
Um, Also audiobooks, like they are really high production value. So I love reading print, but I also more often than not will read a Star Wars book through audiobook that I get from Libby or my library because they're really well done and high production value. Lots of
Yeah.
sound effects, stuff like that. So that's
I
another
did
cool place to start.
the books that I read for this. I did some of them audio and some of them like some of them ebook, some of them audio, some of them hard copy. And one of
Yeah,
them I think I watched a YouTube because I
love
just
it. Love it.
didn't
Yeah.
order them until I was like, "Mhm."
It's not like you have a puppy or anything. And another dog.
I know.
Two new
It's not
household
like I have.
members within the span of a month and a half.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
So, um, there are a few books I want to recommend though, as just like great places to start. Just like if you want just a book that I pay, one of the things I give Patreon supporters, I don't talk about this enough. The horror buff tier is I give personal recommendations. So here are my personal Star Wars books for those of you who have not read a Star Wars book and just want a recommendation of where to start. So I already said Forces of Destiny, great one to start with. Star Wars comic, the original run, 2015 to 2019, the very first graphic novel, trade paperback collection of the first 12 issues is so good. And it takes place pretty much a month or two after the Battle of Yavin at the end of A New Hope. And it just basically follows Luke, Leia, Han and Darth Vader and like what happens to them. And it tells a story in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, what they're up to in that whole year gap between them is really good. So, and the iconic scene of Darth Vader finding out that Luke is his son. We don't actually see that in the movie. By the time we get Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader already knows that Luke is his son. But the comic gives us a glimpse of what actually how Vader reacted and how he found out, and it's really good. Um, the original trilogy novelization, you can get an adaptation, a collection of those three, really good. Just they're adaptations of the movies, but they each give a little bit of like backstory and stuff like that, and just fun to read. So that's a great one to start with. Speaking of novelizations, Revenge of the Sith, another great novelization to start with, from the third movie. I talked about this in our Revenge of the Sith episode, but the book makes the movie so much better. Um, oh, I skipped over Ronin. So Star Wars Visions, what started out as an animated series of shorts on Disney Plus of different animation studios and animators around the world. Disney collaborated with them to create their own little Star Wars animated short that are not necessarily canon, but just are like, what would this animation studio's take on Star Wars be kind of idea. And they're all really fun. There are two seasons now on Disney Plus, but there was one of the animated shorts inspired an entire novel written in that universe. It's called Ronin, the Star Wars Vision novel, by let me scroll down to where I have her name written, Emma Michael Candon. So good. And it gets a lot of, it's one of those books that if you look at reviews, it gets a lot of poor reviews because it was written by a Asian American woman, a Japanese American woman specifically, about a Star Wars universe as if it were set, instead of having like George Lucas's understanding of Star Wars universe being this kind of futuristic fantasy world. This is what if Star Wars, the Jedi Order, was modeled after feudal Japan, kind of like that fictional conception of Star Wars. Really, really good. And so a lot of fans and reviewers don't like it because they're racist. I mean, what else can you say? And there's also a non-binary character and stuff in it. So a lot of people are just like, oh, Star Wars is too woke. This novel's too woke. But, or they also are kind of upset that it changes so much about the Star Wars universe, but like it's its own version of Star Wars. It's not canon and it's just a really fun story. So if you can buy the concept that someone can take Star Wars and have fun with it and kind of take the themes of Star Wars but apply it to a different setting, it's a really good book. Um, and then the last one I will recommend is Star Wars Catalyst by James Luceno, and it is a prequel to Rogue One. It basically tells the story of Jyn Erso and her family, especially her father, Galen Erso, and his involvement with the Death Star project and all of that. It's just a really
I may have done that last Yoda while Darth Paperweight, or Darth Paper. They have a bunch of them in the series, and the R2-D2 one is really cool. If you buy it, then you can take out the specific like colored paper. They include colored paper to make the stuff. Don't take it out if it's the library book, which is why
Yeah.
it's still in there. And then, yeah. So then I read the ebook of The Forces of Destiny, the Leia Chronicles. And they are
Mm,
cute. I also have the Rey Chronicles I was able to find, but I didn't have time to read it. So I'm going to go back and I will probably read it again because it's a quick read. It was
yeah.
3 stories, two of them on Endor, and then one of them was, what's the other one? Two of them were on Endor, and one of them was on a different planet. Two of them were on Endor, and then one of them had Sabine and Leia doing a thing before
Yeah.
Endor. So it was not in order, which was weird and kind of threw me off. But they were cute, cute, cute books.
Yeah.
And I'm
I like
excited
them.
to read the Rey Chronicles. I think
Yeah,
that's
and
okay.
there's also an Ahsoka one and a Padme one. So there are 4 books total.
Yep. Those just the Ahsoka and Padme were not accessible to me.
Oh, there might be a Sabine one. So maybe there's 5.
Oh, nice.
I
Um,
think the Sabine story and Leia stories told him both the Leia and the Sabine one
okay.
for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Um, and then the Darth Vader and Son is probably the most well-known of the Star Wars kids books because it's gone back. Like it was just a popular baby book. It is funny and like it is made for Star Wars nerds who have kids in their life. It is not made for kids. Like it is a kids book, but they aren't going to get it. They aren't going to understand it. It is like see spot run kind of, right? Like it's just really simple stuff, but it has like Darth Vader quotes thrown in and different scenes from the movie, and it's kind of like it's I think it's colored pencil drawings, but it's like that style. So it's cute, and I'm excited to I will probably go back. that I watched on YouTube, somebody doing it on YouTube, and I will probably go back and watch Vader's Little Princess because
Yeah.
again, why are we always with the Luke? But it is I think the most well-known of the kids' books.
Mhm.
And then Jedi Brave in Every Way was adorable. I actually Hoopla had it as a read-along storybook, which was really cool. And I
Ooh.
didn't know. So it's part of the High Republic books. Um, but so it takes the book when you read it on the computer or on your screen, it takes the book and it highlights the words as it reads. So Okay.
And she has a Jedi lightsaber that can turn into a whip, a light whip, which is the coolest weapon ever in Star Wars so far.
A
And she's,
lightsaber that turns into a light whip.
yes,
Okay.
and it's purple.
I love a
And
good
she is
purple.
green skinned, which is cool. I don't quite remember
Ooh.
her alien species name, but um, and so I really like Vanessa Rowe. She's a great character. Uh, Reith Silas is a Padawan learner who also is a reoccurring character in some of the YA novels, and some of the adult novels too, but especially the YA novels, and he's pretty cool too. Um, so basically, what's happening in this world is the Chancellor of the High Republic is Lena So, and this at this era in the galaxy, the Republic truly is more of a democracy as opposed to the way we see it in Phantom Menace and later, where it's really kind of ruled by money, very similar to the United States government now. Kind of corporations and the Trade Federation stuff, like really playing it to the point that the a Sith Lord Palpatine is able to take advantage of that and rise to power. Um, Influence that. Whereas in this, it's still like problematic. It's still very much kind of romanticized idea of what a republic can be. And yet it's clear that the republic really is invested in trying to bring prosperity and help and aid, and it's like kind of what the vision of the United Nations is supposed to be, but often
Mm.
doesn't function, but kind of that for the galaxy.
Hmm.
And they're just expanding into the outer rim when this is happening, just a little bit, but they basically have the core of the Galactic Republic is as strong and together and kind of working for the greater good as it ever is in the history of the galaxy.
Okay.
Um, and so this kind of time of relative peace and prosperity, the Chancellor Lena So kind of wants to honor this by setting out to do these things called the Great Works. So the first is to create Starlight Beacon, which is a giant space station um, on the border of the outer rim of the galaxy, which they are intentionally creating as a hub for trade, for commerce, for support, for all of those things, and also for navigation, and to really say the intention of the Republic is to be there for you on the outer rim, because thus far in the history, there hasn't been that support. So, in
Mm.
part because the outer rim was just so hard to get to. So Starlight Beacon helps people get to it. They're also kind of experiencing a little bit of a renaissance from the cultivation of Bacta, which is what Luke goes into the Bacta tank. It's a restorative thing we see in the Star
Oh,
Wars
yeah.
movies. So this is the beginning of like Bacta has revolutionized medicine and stuff like that, and aid and helping people. That's another one of the great works. They do this giant Republic fair, kind of like global fairs here or the Olympics, similar stuff to that. So that's another one of her great works. And then they also have created communication relays that allow fast and light direct communication with people in the outer rim, which up to then was not possible. You can only get news through
Mm.
ships physically crossing into the outer rim. So all this is happening. And so that's the setting. It seems like everything is great, but there is this pirate organization called the Nihil, and I like to think like if you have seen the show Firefly, problematic, I know
Mhm.
Joss Whedon and all that stuff, but the what were they called? The Reavers or something like that,
Yes,
who lived on the
the
outer
Reavers.
rim of the solar system, which are only trying to spread chaos. That's kind of what the Nihil are similar, the Star Wars version of that, and they decide to that now that the Republic has crossed into the Outer Rim, they have a personal vendetta against the Jedi. So they want to destroy the Jedi and they want to destroy the High Republic. And so it's
Mm.
not Sith or anything like that, but it is this like pirate kind of anarchist organization that wants to cause as much chaos and harm as possible um, to the Republic and to the Jedi Order. And so they do a hyperspace attack in the very first book where they blow up a ship while it's in hyperspace. And because it was in hyperspace, the ship explodes into various points throughout the galaxy, causing debris to threaten
Oh.
planets and stuff like that. And so the very first book is about the Jedi responding to that crisis, and then the subsequent novels are about the continual harm the Nihil is doing, but also the continual harm that has done to the Republic and to the planets. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's the first phase, deals with that. And the last
Okay.
and the it's hinted at from the beginning, so it's not really a spoiler, but skip like 15 seconds if you don't want any spoiler. But this is kind of a big plot point, and it comes back, is the final book is about the very beginning of the book. The Nihil attack Starlight Beacon, and they destroy Starlight Beacon early on in that book. And so it's basically the destruction of the great works. And so that's how phase one ends. And then phase two goes back in time to 380 years before New Hope. And it talks about the origin of the Nihil and the Nameless, which is this beast that only a force beast that is dark, uses dark side of the force energy, only attacks people who have a connection to the force, and it drains them of the force and also drains them of their life. And so they die at, they die if they're attacked by the nameless, but the nameless can also, if you just spend time with it around the nameless and you're not attacked by them, they will drain you of your force and you can no longer use the force. So
Oh no, that's
yeah, so
bad.
that's kind of phase two, talks about them and also the nameless and kind of the origin of the Nihil. And then phase three, which is coming out now, it started this year. There are 3 books published in phase three so far, and another 6 to go that have yet to be published. And it continues the story with, now that Starlight Beacon has been destroyed, what do we do? How does the Jedi Order function? And how do they defeat the Nihil? So, or do they? We assume they do because they're not, the Nihil don't exist in a Phantom Menace, but uh, yeah. So that's
Nice.
the High Republic. And it is so good. It's a lot. So like I get you may not want to like read the whole thing. It's a lot. But if you just want to get a taste of it, the kids' books are fun. The Acolyte show is fun. But also there are middle grade books um for the High Republic. The first, I have 2 of them here. The
Good thing you're
A
in
Test
the
of
Jedi
Courage.
Temple Library.
Yep. A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland is one of them. And it's like they have full color page illustrations. They're about, let's see, 250 pages long. But really good stories that don't have like they are set in the High Republic world, but they don't impact the main story directly. So you can read them without getting spoilers. If you just want to dip your toes in, see what the High Republic's about, I cannot recommend these enough. And they're written well, like they're compelling reads. I think people are dismissing them because they think middle grade means like it's not good or it suffers in quality, but no, these are excellent stories and
Yeah.
um, really love them. And they are unique stories too. Like you can only get these in these books. You don't get this in the main stuff. Um, so that's a great place to start. But yeah, cannot recommend High Republic enough. Some of the themes though that I just want to point out is at this point the Jedi Order is very much a religion, and we talk about that a little bit in our coverage of the Jedi Order, what it means to be a religion. But it's also
Mhm.
interesting that in this era of the galaxy, the Jedi are not the only Force religion, and neither are the Sith, but there are multiple Force religions in the
Mhm.
galaxy, with some who are sensitive to the Force, some are made of people who are not Force sensitive, but still worship the Force in some way or try to follow the Force or commune with the Force. And the fact that there are like a dozen or so of these different Force religions in the galaxy, and each one has like its own influence. The Jedi are still the largest one, and most active in the Republic, but they're not the only one. I just think that's really cool to see um as well. So
Well, and that's like the way that that's what it's going back to with Rey and Ahsoka. Like
yeah,
both of them in their own ways are going back to a space of force sensitivity is not automatic transcription into the Jedi Order, but that
yeah,
there's more flexibility with what that can be and what that can look like, which is really cool.
yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm. So that was a lot about the High Republic, and not gonna lie, my version of things is when I hear too much, then I get overwhelmed. Um, so we're gonna do even more. Just kidding, but it's a totally different thing. So we've been talking a lot
Yeah,
about Star Wars books and novels and all of those things, and now we're gonna veer a little bit with a huge shout out and thanks to friend of the podcast, Stephanie Kaler, for her recommendations as a high school librarian. But into non-Star Wars sci-fi-ish books. That if you are interested in Star Wars but maybe don't want to read the books, or you've read all the books, like Pace, then these are other books that you might be interested in that have some of the similar themes, that sort of thing. So I'm going to list Stephanie's top picks first, and then I'll say some of my additional things. And then I think Pace also has a few books. And of course, Suzannah, if you have any additions you would like to throw in, they are very welcome um, as well. So the first book that Stephanie recommended was the Nine Fox Gambit series by Yoon Ha Lee. And in that, Captain Kel Cheris of the Hexarchate is disgraced for her unconventional tactics, and Kel Command gives her a chance to redeem herself by retaking the Fortress of Scattered Needles from the heretics. And so her not only is her career on at stake, but if the fortress falls, then the Hexarchate itself might be the next thing to fall. So she hooks up with an undead tactician named Shuos Jedao. I think I'm pronouncing these right, but I might not be. And they work on the battle plan and all of that stuff on what seems like maybe a never-ending siege. And so it gets deeper and deeper into like the complications of all of that, but it is very much a like tactical battle redemption kind of sci-fi book. And that was her top pick. If you like Star Wars, that's her top pick. Then she also recommended Artemis by Andy Weir. And this is about a person named Jasmine Bashara who wanted to get rich. Not like ridiculous rich, just rich enough to achieve what probably we would actually call a middle class life these days, because
mm.
you know capitalism and whatnot. And so she has the chance at a huge score, and she's been doing some smuggling stuff, and so it's a shift into full-on criminal mastermind work. And the and then like that comes with all of the conspiracies and all of the different like politics and other things that are at play in the world that she has been kind of on the edges of, but now she is, yeah,
Yeah.
right in the throes of it. So, um, and I haven't seen either of these two or the next one, or I haven't read either of these two or the next one that we're going to read, but I very much trust Stephanie's recommendations. She does not steer me wrong with her recommendations. So, the other book series is the Poppy War series by R.F. Kuang. When Rin aced the Keju, the Empire-wide test to find the most talented youth to learn at the academies. It was a shock to everyone. The test officials who couldn't believe a war orphan from Rooster Province could pass without cheating, to Rin's guardians who believed they'd finally be able to marry her off and further their criminal enterprise, and to Rin herself, who realized she was finally free of the servitude and despair that had made up her daily existence. And then she gets into the most elite of the military schools, and then, life is not actually a walk in the park. As a dark-skinned peasant girl from the South, it was not easy for her to be there. And so then it goes into to all of that, right? To kind of picking apart race, poverty, race, class, gender, all of those different ways that impacts Rin's life and how she tries to learn and grow, and the war and all of that stuff. So that's cool. And she gets some shamanic powers. So extra special, cool, awesome. Yeah. And then Ready Player One by Ernest Cline is also recommended. I have read this and I've seen the movie, and I enjoyed it because it has like all of my generations and like the Zennial generations, I think, like pop culture references
Yeah.
are everywhere.
I've only seen the movie, but love it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's set in the year 2044. The world has sufficiently gone to hell in a handbasket, and the protagonist, Wade Watts, is like really wants to be like anywhere else. And so he is in the virtual reality kind of world of the Oasis, and is trying to follow these clues left by the creator of the Oasis to find the hidden series that will let him be in charge of the whole thing and get massive fortune and all of that stuff. And so he stumbles upon the first puzzle, and then the book kind of takes off from there. But yeah, it's fun. It is very much a like nostalgia kind of, oh, I remember those games, kind of book that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And then the other book that Stephanie recommended that I also have not read is Year Zero by Rob Reed. Low-level entertainment lawyer Nick Carter thinks it's a prank, not an alien encounter, when a red-headed mullah and a curvaceous nun show up at his office. But Frampton and Carly are highly advanced, if bumbling, extraterrestrials. The entire cosmos, they tell him, has been hopelessly hooked on American pop songs ever since Year Zero, 1977 to us, resulting in the biggest copyright violation since the Big Bang and bankrupting the whole universe. So he is tasked with cleaning up this mess before it gets too ugly. And he has about, 48 hours to save humanity. So that just sounds like a fun, kind of goofy read, delightful read. And then I will add to those selections, my own selections. I really recommend Warcross by Marie Lu. It's a 2-book series. And I'm like, Amika the alien side of androids. Um, but I really enjoy them, and I'm currently rereading them, so that gives you a hint.
Yeah.
Also, Iron Widow by Sharon J. Zhao. And Iron Widow is the first of the books, and it is a sci-fi retelling of the rise of Wu Zetian, the only female emperor in Chinese history. And so it follows an 18-year-old reimagining of Zetian as she avenges her sister's murder by an intensely patriarchal military system that pairs boys and girls up to pilot giant magical mecha based on creatures from East Asian mythology. And the boy pilots are treated like celebrities, and the girls serve as their concubines. And yeah, so that's kind of how it starts and takes off from there. I was enthralled with it. I loved it when I read it. And I'm excited for the next book to come out at some point. I do not
Love
know
that.
when, though. And then The Hunger Games. If you want to resist empire, The Hunger Games is a great book on resisting empire and resisting the capitalism that runs away with us and that subjugates all of us in really terrible, terrible, terrible ways. Also, I just found out when I
Hmm.
was prepping that there's a fifth book in the series coming out. So there's the original trilogy, there's a prequel, The Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes, and there's a fifth book coming out next year, potentially, maybe the year after. It was a little fuzzy. I think next year, though, that takes place in the 50th Hunger Games, so 24 years before the
Ooh.
first book of the original trilogy and the second quarter quell. And if you've read all of them, you'll know that that has special meaning because of a certain Haymitch. So that I'm intrigued by it. I think it needed to come out probably right now, but based on like the snippets that I said of what that I read of how it digs into propaganda and all of that sort of thing. So I'm excited about that one. And then I was
Nice.
looking at Octavia Butler's books, and the Xenogenesis series I think would be a really great um Star Warsy like space. It's got space, it's got aliens, it's got humans. So I think that could be a good entry into some Octavia Butler. It's the first book in the Xenogenesis series is Dawn, and in Dawn, Lilith Yapo awoke from a centuries-long sleep to find herself aboard the vast spaceship of the Oankali, creatures covered in writhing tentacles. The Oankali had saved every surviving human from a dying, ruined Earth. They healed the planet, cured cancer, increased strength, and were now ready to help Lilith lead her people back to Earth, but for a price.
Nice.
So it sounds really cool to me. And Octavia Butler is
Yeah. Same.
a fantastic, like one of the foremost sci-fi writers, authors ever. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And then the last two things are both RPGs. So one is Into the Motherlands, which is still in Kickstarter development phase, but they're getting ready to, I think they're hoping to ship this year. I backed the Kickstarter, so I'm like on the
Mm.
Discord and stuff. But it
Yeah.
is, the premise of it is that colonialism has never been a thing. So
Ooh,
yeah,
interesting.
so I'm excited about that kind of futuristic sci-fi imagining of a world that is not based in colonialism. And then also Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which is a role-playing game. They have their own mechanics, and there's a bunch of different ways that you can play it. And there some of the like pre-made stories that you can play are spacey, sci-fi spacey, and
I
there's plenty
played a
of fun.
game.
Yes, you did. I tried to GM that game. Suzannah also played. That was,
It's fun.
yeah, yeah. I think we were all a little bit out of our depth on that first part, but
Yeah.
um yeah, it was a fun game. It was a cool book, and I like the stories, and I would be interested to play it before trying to GM it.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is probably like a good general thing.
We
But
should find one. I'll play one with you. We should find someone who's gonna.
okay, I know somebody who was reading it who might. I'll ask.
Okay, cool.
Or if any of our listeners want to GM Thirsty Sword Lesbians, that would be a fun spin-off, I don't know, Patreon special to just listen to Pace and I
Right.
try and play Thirsty Sword Lesbians.
So
I
like
have a character for it and everything.
I
I
know.
have a request.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so
Yes.
my request is that like I had Matt do um I got Matt Foundry for Christmas, and now I'm sort of
Mhm.
obsessed with it. And so, if you would like to have part of like this, is something to just think about. Do you know what Foundry is? It's like virtual tabletop. So like you can create the tabletop on the screen, so all the people that come
Oh,
into that server can see the
yeah.
world that you
I've heard
create.
about this.
Yeah, so I would love to be a part of helping you build your thirsty sword lesbian world, um, and have all
In
of that
Foundry.
in Foundry. And I mean, the
Oh
idea of
my
creating
God.
the thirsty sword lesbian world just sounds really exciting to me. And then your viewers could like not just watch you
Yeah.
play, but maybe you could have like some viewers that come in and play, and they can come
Okay,
right into
so
the server and everything.
Yeah.
here's my idea. If we get, let's say, go big. If we get 20 Patreon supporters, we will make this happen as a
Yeah.
Patreon exclusive.
Yep.
Um, uh,
I'm here for
Emily and
that.
Pace doing a role-playing game, and Suzannah helping make it possible on the Foundry thing.
I can't wait to see the Thirsty Sword lesbian world that Suzannah helps create. This is going to be
Right.
fantastic. So,
And
20
it's a horror
Patreon.
podcast. There'll have to be a
Yeah.
horror element and sci-fi
Yep.
too. It'll
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
fun.
Totally. Maybe even some Muppets. I had to. So, 20 Patreon supporters. I think we can do this. I think
I
this
think
is
so
the
too.
year our Patreon blossoms. I'm a Patreon supporter for Horror Nerds at Church. You can be too.
I am for Nerds at Church. Mutual support
Indeed.
and admiration for our sibling podcast.
Yes, yes, of course. Much admiration. hmm I think
We
Pace, you
share
have.
a host,
Oh,
so we have
it's
to.
true. It's true. No, I was just
Nope.
gonna say it was Pace had a book to recommend.
Yeah, I have so many to recommend,
I
but
mean,
I'm not going to. But just like shout out, of course, Frank Herbert's Dune is classic, and kind of inspired parts of the Star Wars universe, including things like Tatooine. Um,
hmm.
and the Star Trek series, there's a million and a half Star Trek books. Excellent, especially if you're a Trekkie person or more Star Trek than Star Wars. Um, all that is out there. And then Doctor Who also has hundreds of books. So that's another sci-fi world you can get into. And I've been dabbling in a little bit of all three of those. Star Wars being my main one right now, but they're all fun.
Mhm.
But I have to shout out A Thousand Pieces of You by past podcast guest Claudia Gray. This is her
Mm.
sci-fi series, her own universe, not Star Wars
Ooh.
related. And it deals with androids. She described, I have not read it yet, and I cannot wait to read it, but she talked about it a little bit in our interview with her, where when we told her we were going to be covering aliens, she said that this book she thinks does better and more intentionally what Prometheus was trying to do with AI. And so that alone makes me want to read it. And it's apparently about AI that kind of starts to fall in love and develop sentience and all that kind of stuff. Android kind of thing is a part of the book. Just sounds really good. So I want to read that when I can. YA novel, I believe, and it's a series. This is just the first one. And I also think, if I remember correctly, this is the book that got Lucasfilm interested in hiring her to start writing for Star Wars. So
Mm. Sounds cool.
Yep, yep. Um, well, I think, oh, you have recommendations? Share, Susanna.
Too many mute buttons. Yes, I do. Okay, so and I haven't finished both of these series, but they seem like in line with what you're talking about because I love space politics. Space politics, like the places where like physics and politics meet is just super cool to me. So the first one that I would recommend is the Expanse book series. Which
Yeah.
if you saw some of it on Sci-Fi Channel, but the series is highly grounded in actual physics, and it really is the concepts of colonialization and what that does to you. And then when you find out that there's this whole other species that have existed and are no longer, and what you do with the remnants of that technology, and it really broke down politics. My favorite part of it was
Nice.
that you had this like Mother Earth, but how we've ruined how we've ruined, like, there's the environmental politics and how we've ruined that planet, and then there are the big true blue believers that go to Mars and are trying to create this entire other, like, try to do it better the second time. But then you see where like the most marginalized people end up being in the belt, in the mining. It's definitely like an analogy for coal miners, and the how we've had like these like blue collar people that have been the backbone of our society, and that continues on in space, and about the juxtaposition in the politics amongst all three of those entities when the miners want to have their own, like, want to be recognized as their own sovereign entity, and then you throw an alien in the mix. So it's fantastic.
Love it.
It's really really good. And then the second one, which also I am not done like reading, is okay, so Three Body Problem. So there's Netflix.
Yeah.
I really love the Netflix version of Three Body Problem because it does keep a lot of the original books, but it also diversifies it even more. Three Body Problem. The three books are Three Body Problem, The Dark Forest, and Death's End, and it does diversify it more in that the core characters of the Netflix series come from different parts of the world and are many different ethnicities. But this gave me an existential crisis for like weeks. Like, this gave me like no. If you can't handle a whole bunch of books, then just watch Quinn on YouTube does a 4-hour video breaking them all down, and it talks about it's really about what's called the Dark Forest is the important part. It's all very very like it's a very like sad look at the universe, but it's talking about like cosmic sociology. So we're talking about the interaction and the politics amongst various civilization over massive amounts of time scales that we can't even fathom.
Oh, wow.
And they did this amazing attempt at covering those time scales in ways that we couldn't fathom. And what happens, what the distance between civilizations does to the way civilizations are able to communicate, because by the time one civilization finds out about another civilization, that first civilization could have overtaken them in technology, and that creates a situation where every civilization you come in contact with is a very credible threat. And so like seeing all of your neighbors as a threat, so like there's definitely this like concept. I'm not putting in too many spoilers, but there's definitely this concept of what if life itself is the infection? What if perfect cosmology
Love
is
it.
is by itself, and it's not until life is introduced into the equation of any form that is what
Yeah.
brings us back from
Ooh.
heaven, from paradise. But that, because there's
I
definitely a
love
premise
that.
that the original universe was its own paradise, and that it's all life that eventually gets to this place where they slowly, bit by bit. It's just by the end I was like, I don't believe in life anymore. Everything is
Yeah,
like,
it was bad.
it was really bad. And
I
then,
love it.
but like the theological component is that it really made for me.
Right?
It really made for me the understanding of a loving God, a loving higher power, a radical act, a radical act, that the idea of love becomes this incredibly radical, just like next level act, just love in itself, and faith in itself. When you see that kind of nihilism, that kind of like existential crisis, to have a belief
Yeah.
system. And so like I can't go to too much detail about, but it's just like the theology of it is, I can't, like
Yeah.
it's just fucking stunning. It's like stunning, and nothing has ever hit me as hard as like learning about the whole plot line of it, because there was so much science involved having to do with dimensions and space travel, and like when you do space travel, what that does to the physics of this fabric, space-time fabric, like how that can disintegrate it. It's its own environmental disaster, bending space-time, and it just like there's, oh, it's so good. Anyway, those are mine. um
I
yeah,
love
like
it though.
I thought you were gonna say the
It sounds
foundation
like,
or
I love
foundation.
oh,
Foundation, but
yeah.
Three Body Problem I
I
have to
haven't
shout
read the
out
book.
to.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
We have an episode on that with Lenny Duncan,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the TV show, which was
The
fun.
first season of the
Um,
TV show.
yeah,
There's
we
two.
will have to talk about Three Body Problem on the podcast because it sounds right up our alley. And it sounds like to you, Susanna, what Everything Everywhere All at Once, the first time I saw it, was to me. Like that level of existential
Mm-hmm.
It
crisis and
is. Yeah, yeah.
just
It's
a
that. Yeah.
deep shift in my understanding of myself and of the universe and of the divine. That's what Everything Everywhere All at Once did for me. And we have an episode of that with River Cook Needham, as
Yeah.
well. So.
Yeah, it sounds
Sure.
like it. Very
And
similar. Yeah.
I forgot to mention Alien, the franchise, which was our other franchise we covered this season, has a lot of great books out there too. Novelizations of the film, but also like prequels, sequels, their own universe stuff. It's really cool. Comics and all that stuff too. And the last thing I want to mention, we are not talking about movies and TV shows that relate to Star Wars because we go on forever because we have so many. But I
Mhm.
just have to name, because it is special to the three of us in this room, that some of our first early hanging out, early stages of the pandemic when we were all isolated and wanting to hang out, was Susanna would host sci-fi stuff over Zoom, but especially, what was it? BSG was the main one. And then it
Yep.
continued with a few people in the podcast more than others, but like it started off the three of us watching a few of those, and River too sometimes watching a few
Hmm.
things, and it was kind of a early what drew us to become friends and chosen fam, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was definitely a big part of like the point in the pandemic where it was like, okay, this is not temporary. This is, as they say, ride or die. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep,
I mean, it probably
that'll
wasn't
start going after
copyright.
that.
It probably wasn't copyright approved. But
Oh,
like I would
by
like
which
stream
we mean,
stuff.
no, we all individually streamed it and we just happened to be watching it together on the
Yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. That's what
Ahem, ahem.
happened.
Right? No password sharing either among us. We are
No,
all
nobody did.
following the
Who
terms and
password
conditions of our
shares?
agreements. That we totally read thoroughly too.
Oh yeah,
Um,
really, really. Mhm.
so we're gonna talk about our witch season picks, but I just kind of, before we leave Star Wars, because I've read probably about 100, 120 Star Wars books in the past year and a half. I just wanted to
You
share the
did.
top
You
10
really
that
did.
I read. And then I also have a few honorable mentions I haven't read, but just are kind of consistently rated high among the fan base, um, that I want to read soon. And then also, those of you who have read Star Wars books, please leave your top 10 or your favorites, or even if it's just one, in the comments or
reach out to us via email and we'll read it on the podcast if you ever send an email.
Yeah.
Promise.
Yeah, because we still have to do our Return of the Jedi from a
Yeah.
certain point of view episode. So we'll be back on. This is not the very, very,
Yeah.
very end of Star Wars. That won't happen until probably the witch season starts,
Right.
if I'm being totally
So,
honest.
so I'll start with the 10 to number one. And I cheated on a few of these. And also this list was changing up until this morning. So like this was a hard for me to narrow it down to 10. But I feel pretty good with these 10. And it'll probably change tomorrow if you ask me again. But so number 10th place, Kenobi by John Jackson Miller takes place the first few months after Obi-Wan lands on Tatooine with Luke and gives Luke over to his uncle to
Mm.
raise. And so basically follows Obi-Wan meeting a few people in near a village and helping them with a piracy problem and stuff like that. It's just really cool book, kind of canon, but kind of not official. Catalyst, already talked about by James Luceno, follows the Urso family
Mhm.
leading up to Rogue One. Master and Apprentice, the very first Star Wars novel I read by Claudia Gray. So good. Follows Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon when Obi-Wan's still a Padawan. Takes place about 2 or 3 years before Phantom Menace. Ronin I mentioned as well, Emma Mako Candon. It follows a former Sith Lord in a feudalistic Japan-inspired version of Star Wars.
Mhm.
The Rise of Skywalker and The Revenge of the Sith are 5 and 6 for me. Both are novelizations of movies, but both made the movies so much better, and both did the best they could with the movies they got to make it into like a good, coherent story. And they actually do so pretty successfully.
I
The
I
Rise of
remember you.
Skywalker.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
go
say I
ahead.
remember you saying that about the Rise of Skywalker that you liked the movie
Yeah,
more after having read the book, which is
yeah.
you know.
But Rise of Skywalker novelization by Ray Carson and Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover. Um, then two High Republic books. These are both coincidentally young adult books, but they're both really good. The adult novels are all great too, but I particularly love these two. Into the Dark and Out of the Shadows. Into the Dark by Claudia Gray, Out of the Shadows by Justina Ireland, and they kind of are paired with each other and follow some of the same characters during a major event in the High Republic. Really good. Um, this is where I cheat. So I have trilogies now that count as one space, but I can't. So
That's
number
fine. That's fine.
two, it's a Star Wars Legend novel, so it's not canon anymore, but it can be canon in your heart. We said that all season.
Mhm.
Darth Bane, Lucasfilm and Disney don't get to determine what's canon in our hearts. But anyway, Darth Bane trilogy follows the end of the Sith War about 1,000 years before the events of Phantom Menace. And it begins the rule of two between one Jedi master and or one Sith master and one Sith apprentice. And it basically follows Darth Bane, who's the one who created that, killed all the Sith, and then created his own Sith order of just two. Really good book. By Drew Karpyshyn. And then the number one is the unofficial Leia trilogy. I call it the Leia trilogy. Some fans do. They're not written necessarily as a trilogy, and they weren't published in uh they weren't published like in a sequential order like a trilogy, but they intentionally still work together very well. So Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray follows Leia about no, maybe 3 years, 3 to 5 years before the events of A New Hope, as she starts to learn that her parents might be involved in the rebellion. And then The Princess and the Scoundrel by Beth Revis takes place immediately after Return of the Jedi and goes on for a few months and talks about Leia and Han Solo getting married and their honeymoon, but it's against the backdrop of the Empire's just fallen. So their honeymoon is as much a publicity stunt for the New Republic of trying to go around the galaxy and see how things are doing. And
Hmm.
maybe is the Empire still out there kind of thing. It's really good.
Interesting.
And Mon Mothma, one of Emily's favorite characters, features prominently in the beginning and end of that book. And
Nice.
then Bloodline, which is, if I had to just pick one as my best, as the best Star Wars book of all time thus far, Bloodline by Claudia Gray follows Leia about 5 or 6 years, I think, before the sequel trilogy begins. Her son hasn't fallen to the dark side. He's still under the care of Luke, training with him. And she is still a senator. And the First Order hasn't made itself known yet, is but still the secret organization. And it follows what happens when Leia starts to investigate a threat. The threat turns out to be kind of seeded by the First Order. And as a result of this, the fact that Darth Vader is hers and Luke's father gets released in propaganda to the Galactic Senate to discredit Leia. And it basically deals with the consequences of that, and also the planting the seeds for the resistance and why the resistance exists in the sequel trilogy. And that's also by Claudia Gray. So those books,
Nice.
so freaking good. Cannot recommend it enough.
We are major
And then,
Claudia Gray stands on this podcast.
right,
Also, she's been on
right,
the podcast, so
right. Um, Then there are 4 honorable mentions. I just call these honorable mentions because I haven't read them, so I can't vouch for them personally, but they are consistently rated among everybody, the fan favorites among the complete Star Wars fandom, not just the incel group that is the vocal face of the Star Wars fandom in media, sadly, but more the true breadth of the Star Wars fandom rank these among the best as well. Alphabet Squadron by Alexander Freed is a trilogy, but it takes place in between Return of the Jedi, a few years after Return of the Jedi, and the collapse of the Empire, and a group of people a squadron of the New Republic trying to clear out the Empire from the parts of the galaxy. The Lost Stars by Claudia Gray takes place during the Empire, near the fall of the Empire, and it's been described as Romeo and Juliet, except Romeo is for the Empire and Juliet is for the rebellion. And can their romance last this? Spoilers, it's a tragedy. It's like known as a tragedy, but basically
I
Romeo
mean,
and
it
Juliet
is
set in the
Romeo and
Star Wars
Juliet.
universe.
That's also a tragedy slash comedy.
Exactly. So Claudia Gray's is people rank that among the best books out there. And I think that was her first Star Wars book she wrote.
Wow,
Um,
nice.
then, and all these are on my list. I just haven't got to them. So no shade to any of these in my own personal reading habits. The Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn. There's a canon trilogy. Uh, there's a non-canon trilogy, 2 different trilogies. Both are rated very good. Very good. Very high among fans. The non-canon trilogy, the Legends trilogy, is what started the Star Wars expanded universe in the early 90s and the wave of Star Wars publishing. Um, and then the canon novel brings the character of Thrawn back into canon and also ties in with Star Wars Rebels, which he's a character that appears in Star Wars Rebels, and he also appears in Ahsoka, the TV series. And then there's also the canon Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy, also by Timothy Zahn, which is also canon and I think a prequel trilogy to the other Thrawn books.
Hmm.
So
Cool.
lots of Star Wars out there for all levels of fans. And again, tell us in the comments, what are your favorites?
Yeah,
Love to hear.
my favorites are the From a Certain Point of View trilogy.
Love
For
it.
now.
They're so good. All of them.
They really are. I just love all the other characters. They're just
And I
so much
think,
better.
honestly, each one gets better. The first one was good, then the Empire was even better, and
Yeah.
then Return of the Jedi, which we haven't recorded yet. One of the reasons we haven't recorded yet is because we're it's hard to narrow down which ones we want to cover because there's so many
It's
freaking
true.
good
We have like
stories in that
6 stories that we want to cover. Yeah,
volume. So,
yeah.
well, we've been on for 2 hours now. I guess we should start to wrap up a little bit. We could go on all night, but I do work tomorrow, and I think one of you probably has puppy duty tonight. So,
It's true. It's true. I had puppy duty last night, so.
fun, fun.
But it does
Well,
mean I'm tired tonight, because that's how it
yeah,
works. You either have puppy duty or you're tired from puppy duty. One of the two.
right. I'm just glad that fireworks weekend is over, for
Yeah, we've
Yoshi,
had a
because that
few
was not good.
fireworks and some
No
thunder
sleep.
today, but not anything like, yeah.
Yeah,
Trying to get a dog to poop or pee when fireworks are going off, it's,
right. It's impossible.
yeah.
My dogs won't do it. Well, Gandalf sometimes will, but Yoshi, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But anyway, we want to end with a sneak peek of our next season. So we already announced our which season picks, but we added three to tie in with the holidays that will be coming up.
Mhm.
Um, and the season will start in September. So we'll announce the which season picks. How about we do the which season picks every other one? Then you do Boo
Movie
Tubes, I'll do
commentary.
movie commentaries, and we can do horror buffs every other one.
Okay, that's fair, as long as you go first.
Okay. So, because you don't want to say this one. Fair, fair.
Yeah.
So, first, 1922, a silent movie, Haxan.
And then our next one, 1939, The Wizard of Oz, of course.
Classic. Have to cover that in a which season.
Mhm.
Um, Black Sabbath from 1963. This is one of the ones that our listeners voted to be part of the season.
Bedknobs and Broomsticks, 1971.
Honestly, my favorite witch movie I think of all time.
Mm.
Uh, Halloween Town 19 from 1996, a DCOM Disney Channel original movie and franchise now.
Yeah. The Witches of Eastwick, 1987.
And then wonder what holiday we're gonna do this one on. Um, Eli Roth's Thanksgiving from 2023. Not a witch movie per se, but it ties in with the holiday. We have to cover it.
Totally. And then Matilda, 1996. Apparently, this is controversial. We'll get into it.
We will. We will.
I
It's
guess
a
part of
wonderful. Oh,
I
go
should
ahead.
say, I think part of it is we will have to figure out how we classify witch. What is
Yeah.
a witch? Who is a witch?
And
How do we
as
classify witch?
always, we'll have our lore section. And so that can be part of Matilda, is why we may or may not think she is a witch.
Yeah.
I currently am undecided, so I'm really excited for this.
I'm
To
curious
watch the
of
movie
the
again and then
argument.
talk about it again.
Yeah, I'm curious what the argument is for her to not be. Because it
Just
didn't even cross my
telekinetic. She doesn't
mind.
use magic
Hmm.
unless you can count telekinesis as magic, but like X-Men aren't magic and they have telekinesis and stuff. So,
Yeah, it's
and it's
tricky.
described in the book and the film as her just being so smart and her brain being so underutilized. That is why she has those special powers.
Mm.
Whereas
It's
witchcraft is usually a supernatural reason.
yeah,
But that does
we'll
not
see.
mean that we cannot expand and queer the definition of witch to include that. So
It's true.
stay tuned. Um, it's a Wonderful Knife, which is a parody slash
I'm so
remake
excited for this.
slash
I watched it
horror
last year for the first
comedy.
time. So excited.
I love this movie. It's so good. Came out last year. It's a Wonderful Knife. Parody of It's a Wonderful Life, of course.
It's so good. Practical Magic, 1998.
The Blair Witch Project from 1999. Surprisingly, an Emily pick.
The Covenant, 2006.
Gayest witch movie ever. gay male, I should say. There are many sapphic witch movies out there too. The Love Witch from 2016, another fan vote.
Ooh. My Bloody Valentine from 1981 for, get this, the February Valentine movie.
Woo!
I know, that's a
I
shocker to so many.
One day we'll have to do the remake, which I call my Bloody Christopher Columbus Day intentionally because Christopher Columbus is not a real holiday. And we should not celebrate the person who participated and contributed to genocide.
Yeah.
And what would me calling that say that about the movie? But also that movie takes place in Virginia in February, or not Virginia, sorry, in Pennsylvania, northern Pennsylvania, in a cold town in February, allegedly. But there is no snow. The leaves are still on trees. So there's no way it's actually a Valentine's Day movie in the remake. It is, in fact, a fall holiday movie, which is another reason why I call it My Bloody Christopher Columbus Day. Um,
Good to know.
and
Good to
then,
know.
yep. But that's the remake. We're not covering the remake this season in the future season.
Yeah.
But the last one, Suspiria, which is a remake, kind of, slash sequel, slash
We already
its
saw
own
the
thing.
original. Yeah,
Yes.
because we watched the original already.
Yep. Which we loved.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for movie commentaries, uh, we haven't, I think we've figured out the order of these, but these order may change for all of these.
Yes.
But we'll be watching The Wiz, Halloween 3, which we covered in season 1, but this will be movie commentary, and Emily hasn't seen it yet. The Vivitch or The Witch, which also Emily also hasn't
Wait.
seen, and we covered in season 2.
Not Halloween 3. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Halloween
Sorry.
3.
I was getting confused about
Halloween,
my days. Keep going. You're good.
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, the one about witches and not Michael Myers.
Yeah.
And because Matilda is controversial, we're giving her to you twice by covering the Netflix original Matilda the musical, film adaptation of the musical, the hit Broadway musical. Kiki's Delivery Service, anime film, and then Bewitched, which is kind of a remake slash also a sequel to the original Bewitched TV
Indeed.
show.
I can't wait.
Me
Though
neither. It's gonna be fun.
yeah, I do think the original is better than the remake, but that's neither here nor
You
there.
seen the remake? I thought you hadn't.
For for Bewitched? Oh, we're doing that version? I thought we were doing the older. Okay, I don't know. Maybe. I can't remember. There's so many Bewitched. I used to watch Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, I Love Lucy. Like those were some of my favorites.
Yeah.
So now for our BooTube episodes, we are watching Charmed, the original series, which is what I watched when I got home from school in like elementary school, middle school, middle school, I think. Sabrina the Teenage Witch and The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. So we'll do like a combo of those. We'll watch some of the classic Doctor Who witch episodes. We'll watch American Horror Story Coven.
Which is season 3.
Uh-huh. And A Discovery of Witches. And then
At recommendation of Suzannah.
yes. And then Bewitched.
Yay! And then for horror buffs, their first one starts on a Friday the 13th. September has a Friday the 13th. So you know what that means. We covered Friday the 13th already in season 2, but since Emily has only seen at this point the first Friday the 13th and Freddy versus Jason, we are covering the rest of the franchise anytime a Friday the 13th rolls around for you horror buff $10 Patreon tier supporters. And so we'll be covering Friday the 13th, part 2.
I'm excited. And then Elvira, Mistress of the Dark for October horror buffs.
Which, spoiler, has one of my favorite pun lines in any movie.
Oh yeah. I was like, I don't know anything about this one. That is all I know about this one is the pun line that Pace loves.
If
It's
anyone knows
particularly
Cassandra
great for people
Peterson,
with migraines.
yeah. With any if anyone knows Cassandra Peterson, I'd love to talk to her on the podcast. She is so cool. She's the person who created the character of Elvira, and is Elvira, and basically wrote the story for the movie and started the movie. She is fantastic. So, and she wrote a autobiography a few years ago, which called, I think it's called Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. And no, Yours Truly, Elvira is what it's called. And amazing. And she came out in the autobiography, so she's part of the fam. So just love, all around love her. We'll also be covering The Witches, the 1990 film. The one with Angelica Houston, and this is based on the anti-Semitic Roald Dahl book. So we'll, of course, you know us, we'll talk about that and how it may or may not show up in the movie, but the book it definitely does.
And then December has another Friday the 13th. So we'll be watching Friday the 13th, part 3, 3D. Is it actually in 3D? Do I have to get like 3D glasses?
If you have a TV,
Uh-huh.
that a 3D TV, or if you have 3D glasses, you can watch it in 3D. It was filmed to be shown in 3D and was shown in theaters in 3D. But most
I
ways you stream it, you
despise,
just watch it non-3D.
yeah, I despise the 3D movie trend.
Yeah. I mean, this
I
was back in
already have glasses. I
1981,
don't
so it
need
was part of
another
the
pair.
1982. It was part of the old 3D trend before it came back in the 2000s.
I already have glasses. Leave me alone.
Yeah. It, Friday 13th Part 3 3D. That is the title. It's obnoxious. It says there are 3 number 3s in that title. Friday the 13th Part 3 3D. But all that aside, it's secretly my favorite.
Of course. Of course it is.
It's the one that anybody who visits me in October will be with their consent, but very much invited / strongly encouraged to watch a marathon of horror movies with me, and Friday the 13th Part 3D will invariably be one of the ones that I include in that. Beautiful Creatures, though, which Emily picked. Neither of us have seen it, so I'm excited to cover it. So
Yeah, it sounds like a fun title. And then our February Horror Buffs episode will be In Fabric. I also have no
which
idea
is kind of a yeah, it's kind of a companion movie to the new Suspiria, so I'm really excited to talk about it.
Okay. Okay. I'm here for it. And
By companion, I mean like not the same plot or sharing the same characters or same universe, but like thematically, intentionally very similar and telling a similar kind of story, but in different ways.
Nice. And we will probably have a lit retrospective. I'm assuming. I have at
Will
least
we?
one
We
book I
can.
want to talk about that has a
Yeah,
witch.
we can.
So.
Or I mean, if we don't have a full lit retrospective, we can always have a lit section in our end of the season retrospective too.
Okay.
Depends how
We
much
will
reading we want to do ahead of season 7. I'm always down, but
we will talk about at least one book from me.
I may talk about the Mayfair Witch Chronicles.
Actually, no,
We aren't
there's a
covering the
couple.
TV series, but
There are a couple books that I have. One is a middle school level novel. I have a couple books that would be good for that.
yeah,
So
I'm
yeah,
excited.
yeah.
Wicked is another book, Gregory Maguire. Yeah. Anyway, continue.
do love a good Wicked. Yeah. So that's our witches. We're working on some guests and we're excited about the possibilities for our guests coming up. And
Yeah.
so we might have an additional, one-off episode depending on, sometimes we do that with special guests. So
Yeah.
uh, I'm excited in particular about one guest. But yeah. Um, our next episode coming out hopefully in August will be the final Star Wars episode of this season, which is Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. So hopefully that comes
Yeah.
out in August, but the rest of our Patreon stuff well hopefully comes out mostly in July. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Let's see.
Maybe we'll
Andor will
record
probably
one
come out
on
in August.
Friday morning. We'll see what
Yeah.
people are doing. Yeah. Anyway,
Nope. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in or listening, however you're getting this. It's been super awesome. That's it for our show though. Uh love my Star Wars, love my Alien, but super excited for a break and then to dive into some witches. It's gonna be
mhm.
fun.
And while we're on break, check out Nerds at Church, which is about to start our 5th season on
Yeah.
Supergirl Spectacular.
Every single person on in this live video right now may or may not have been on an episode for that season.
It's true. It's true.
Um,
Yeah.
and also though, if you can't wait to get started on witches until September when we start our season, we've covered a few witch movies already, including both Hocus Pocuses as a crossover with Nerds at Church. We covered The Vivitch with Elle, what am I forgetting her
Out?
name? No,
Oh.
different Elle,
Oh,
but
I don't remember, but I know who
yeah,
you're
I'll
talking
put it in the show notes for those of you catching us on the thing, but I'll link to all these episodes. But we covered The
about.
Vivitch, we covered Halloween 3, we covered a few other witch movies. Addams Family, if you count Morticia as a witch, definitely your grandma as a witch. That was with Elle Dowd, both of those. So a lot of witch movies to get started if you can't wait till September.
Yes, yes. And also, um, we just talked about a whole bunch of books, and Pace might not be excited about this, but if you go to the
But I
link in our
will.
show notes for the
Yep.
episode, we will link to all of these books on
Yep.
bookshop.org. If you use our links,
Yep.
then we get, a couple pennies or something. But if everybody does it, then it might be a couple dollars.
And
Many
also
ways
it
to support
supports
our
local
podcast
bookshops.
and your local bookshop. Exactly.
Yep.
Mm,
And if the books aren't on there, some books aren't. I can link to Amazon, which we also have an Amazon affiliate. I know we don't like Amazon, but Bookshop is our default if the book is there because we support them in local books stores.
indeed.
Um, and then also, thank you all for listening. Thank you all of you who are Patreon supporters for supporting. Thank you all who rate, subscribe, tell your friends, all of it.
Mhm.
We're so grateful for you. And
And
extra, extra, extra. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, most especial, excellent thankfulness for the one who controls the force, at least in terms of technology, our slicer extraordinaire, Suzannah Porter.
100%. Um, we'll need to come up with something fun for which season. What would you be? Like our master or
A
the
witch tech,
potion brewer,
our potion,
technological
ooh,
potion brewer or something.
our spellcaster.
Hmm.
Spellcaster. Ooh, I like that.
Oh,
What are you on roll for sermon? You're the
Wild
wild
magic.
magic?
wild magic.
You can
Yeah,
be
like
wild
I
magic for HNAC too.
that's a good idea. That I'm feeling that. Like I'm trying to remember if y'all saw, and I didn't think about this till now, but if y'all saw the season that was just wrongfully and terribly canceled on Netflix of um the bad one and the bastard son, and son of the devil, son of Satan. Who was that? Oh my gosh, half bad. The bastard, half bad in the bastard's son. That's it. Which is like really helped me let go of J.K. Rowling. Like really helped me completely let
Mm.
go because that was also about two guys and a girl on a journey and one being the chosen one, and there was polyamory and there was queerness and there was
Ooh.
diversity and there were and the magic was terrifying. Like it's not necessarily a good thing to wake up and find out that you can explode people accidentally. That one.
Wow.
I'm thinking about the girl whose magic exploded and just like took everything and removed it to its individual parts. That was her
Okay.
magic.
What I'm hearing
That's what I want to
is we
be.
are definitely going to do. What I'm hearing is we're definitely going to do a Star Wars lit retrospective now. Because
A witchlet?
Yeah, not Star Wars. We just finished our Star Wars. We're not
It's
doing
like this
another one.
is the Star Wars
A
Lit
witch.
retrospective.
A
I'm wearing
witch.
the
Yeah,
shirt for
that's what
it.
I'm hearing though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was it
yeah.
was
But I'm
it
here for a witch retro.
it
Lit
made
retro.
it made she who
Witchlet.
won't be named into a coward. Like you could realize just how much of a coward she was
I
because of the
one of these
places she could
days,
go.
one of
Right.
these days, I want to do a book club episode like we've been doing with From a Certain Point of View on Manhunt by Gretchen. Let me look up her name real quick. Um, which in that book, J.K. Rowling is murdered in her fictional horror book. But it's written by a trans author and it's a horror novel that kind of has zombies. It's just a really good book. Manhunt by Gretchen Belker Martin. Uh,
Mm,
Fantastic book. It follows these trans women in a zombie apocalypse, basically.
mm.
Okay.
But
And
yep,
I just want
that's
to
it for our
thank
show, though, I guess.
let me
Oh, go
thank your
ahead,
viewers for
please.
dealing with like me like figuring out a new system. There may be pieces where the audio went out or like I definitely saw my frame rate drop at some point. So I have to check and see how the stream went. But like it should be fixed by next time. I have a lot of notes.
Perfect. We had fun.
Perfect. But you did amazingly, so do not fret.
Yeah. It
And
looked
thank
great
you,
from here.
listeners. Yeah, right?
Bailey
And
thought it.
I had a window up watching it too with the sound off, and it was going great.
Which means
Yeah.
I probably did
Um,
something wrong with the sound. Well, it's a new sound thing.
no,
There's a
I
whole new
turned the
sound.
sound off, is what I'm saying.
Uh,
I intentionally had the sound off because I'm recording live.
Yeah, that'd be weird. I would
right.
not do
And
that.
I
I
think
don't
like
need
if
to echo.
something went wrong, it was definitely sound because sound is definitely new to me. The sound was completely new to me. I have a whole mixing thing here, and so thank you so much for letting me try this out
Yep.
on you.
You rock.
You rock.
And you listeners at home watching this at work, wherever, we don't judge. You rock as well. Um,
Mhm.
that's it for Star Wars though. So see us
Yeah.
next season for Witches. Our theme music was by Matt May. We release seasonally on Thursdays, so check us out in the beginning of September for more Thursday episodes. Comment, rate, subscribe to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, here on the live stream on YouTube. Um, Support us on Patreon, get exclusive access to so much cool stuff. Boo tubes, horror buff stuff, so much more. Patreon.com/horror nerds at church. It's
Especially
only
if we get 20 Patreon supporters. Don't forget, we're gonna play Thirsty
yes,
North Lesbians.
yes. Um, so it's $5 a month, so cheap. We live in inflation right now, so I know money's tight. And also $5 is cheaper than almost anything you can buy right now because of inflation, sadly.
It's
So
true. Probably cheaper than any of the books, even the kids' ones.
true, true. Except for your library. Your library is free, folks. Most
Yeah,
libraries are free,
save
but
money,
use your local library.
go to the library, and give us the money as Patreon supporters. Win-win.
Yeah, win-win. Uh, you can find us on all the socials, pretty much. Not all of them, but if there are socials we're not on and you want us to be on, let us know. But
Mhm.
Facebook,
As long as
Insta,
it's
Horror Nerds
not
at Church.
Truth Social.
Yeah. That one for sure. No. Blue Sky and Twitter at HNACPOD for all the latest updates about films, news, other announcements, stuff like that. We should get a Slasher. Slasher is the horror social media platform. We should get a
Oh.
Slasher social media account. Um, but anyway, because this is our last Star Wars, until next time, I'm standing here in pieces and you're having delusions of grandeur.
Ah, shut it, C-3PO.